Howdy, y'all. Eric here, Driveline World's OK steering wheel holder. Up here visiting some family. And I got to run and take care of some things real quick on my home time. Before I get into this, kind of some thoughts on some of the freight analysis and stuff. I've got some updates for those longtime subscribers who kind of just follow my journey. I've got some updates for you. I'll save that until the end of the video so I'm not boring everybody who's just dropping into this for the other stuff. But I will say that if you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. The videos are going to be, this channel's going through, it's about to go through a dramatic change. Sorry for the shaky camera. But it's going to go through a dramatic change, and I think you guys are really going to like where we're going with the channel. So make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you want to join in Discord for the after party, we've got a pretty happening Discord. That link is in the description down below. And then we'll get into some of the studio stuff here a little bit later. But anyway, so I've mentioned this before. I've talked about this before, about weather patterns. So I'm going to talk about it again. It might be a little bit redundant for some of you, but the weather has been, and this is very relevant for freight, so stick with me, okay? In my view, weather prediction models have been pretty terrible. I mean, they'll give, like if you're in an area where there is highly likely to be, extreme weather, they can give a very broad view of where that weather is likely to hit for, say, tomorrow, for example. But what I've found really this whole winter and today, or this whole winter and now, is that the wind apps, the prediction models for wind and exactly where thunderstorms are going to hit, they can't even tell this stuff an hour or two in advance now. These, like, Tornado Alley has shifted, and the patterns, they're basing all of their prediction models off of patterns that are decades old. This camera is really shaky. You may just have to minimize this and listen. But the weather patterns are, it's all old models that aren't relevant because the weather's changing and weather patterns are changing. Tornado Alley is not what we used to know as Tornado Alley. Now it's into Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, down to Louisiana, Alabama, and I don't know why meteorologists and all the weather folks don't acknowledge this. Like and maybe it's because it's an acknowledgement that what their whole business model is based on something that is no longer relevant. So they're just trying to pretend that it's still. And the problem is, I could pull up the radar app and it'll say, oh, you're clear, you're in the clear. Like, you do have a chance of some severe weather, but you're in the clear. There's radar showing nothing. And then 40 minutes later, I've got, quarter size hail and 40-mile-per-hour wind, and I'm under a severe thunderstorm. That didn't used to be the case, especially as a truck driver. It was pretty reliable. Let's go back 5 years. The radar, you could look at even really 6-hour, but even 24-hour radar, and it was pretty reliable. You could pretty much tell right where the warm air was going to hit the cold air and right where thunderstorms and stuff were going to pop up, and you could kind of base your day and make your plans off of that. That's not the case anymore. It'll just give you a general idea, but as far as like specifics, you just don't know until it's on top of you. Now, the reason I bring that up is that there seems to be this misfiring happening in freight too. In that, so for the past week, and I follow all these freight analysis and experts pretty religiously, just because I have a trucking business, and obviously imperative for me to kind of have an idea of what's going on, or at least try to track and try to understand, try to follow what's going on. Although my trucks haul refrigerated freight, so we're a little less, it's a little less shaky. You know, I mean, we haul frozen food, produce, food, drink, some pharmaceutical, but so it's kind of, the only thing that's shaky about it is really volumes and rates, but you can pretty much know that there's always going to be freight there. So it's a little bit different than if you're hauling dry van or, you know, some flatbed. I know flatbed's got its ups and downs, but that's not anything new. Freight is freight. It's cyclical, right? There's cycles. It's up and down and up and down and up and down. And that's been the case forever. This is not anything new. But I think we all know and can agree that for the past couple years, we've been in a pretty devastating freight recession. It's been a bloodbath. And I'll be a little repetitive here again, but from previous videos, but it's pretty common knowledge that during COVID, there was this buffet of freight. It was an all-you-could-eat buffet of freight, and there was tons of money to be made, and so everybody went out and bought trucks, and all these drivers and carriers and trucks flooded into the market, and brokers, and you know, all of it. The whole logistics network just kind of exploded because consumers had all this extra money, and consumers were home a lot more. So there were a lot of home improvement projects, and there was a lot of homeschooling, and there was just all of it. You know, people were doing art projects, you name it. Like everybody was home and they had more money. Money was sent out. It was printed and sent out, and everybody had money. So there was a lot of capacity that came into the freight, into logistics. And we didn't realize it at the time, but it was dramatically breaking the system. It was breaking the system in ways that we're still dealing with today. Because today you hear this truck driver shortage. There is no truck driver shortage. First of all, there's no truck driver shortage. That is propaganda put out by the lobbying arms of all the big carriers, because the big carriers need drivers churning through their system. So that's not real. Okay, there's no truck driver shortage. There's too many truck drivers. There's too many truck drivers and there's too many trucks, which gives all the customers, all the shippers and receivers total leverage over freight. They can lowball something that's sitting on their docks if they want, and somebody's going to take it because somebody's got to move. So there's too many trucks, too many drivers, and that is still persistent. In fact, there's still carriers being created. I saw someone post the other day, hey, I'm getting into the business because I think the market's about to turn up, and a lot of trucking companies are now being flushed out, so I want to be positioned for the upswing. I think that's foolish. I think that is a fool's run, but whatever. There's still more trucks coming in when we need a lot less capacity in order to see some sort of normalization of rates and all that. Okay, so let's get to this analysis thing. So right now, over the past week, all the freight economists and analysts now, they're all singing, oh, you know, this is happening with tariffs, and that's happening with tariffs, and now all these ships are coming into the ports, and the ports are starting to reactivate. Freight is so back, and we're about to see this freight boom. And it just reminds me of the weather thing, where we're just acting like we can go base it all off of old patterns, data that's based on old patterns, because here's the problem. Here's what none of them mention. None of them. And when they post something, I see comments down there saying this, but the economist and the analyst won't say this. There's probably some interest involved here. They've probably got investments in companies. Maybe they have sponsors for their websites and magazines or whatever that don't really want them to always be doom and gloom. So they've got to preach positivity, but they're saying it's so bad because all this stuff is happening. But here's the part they don't mention. And here's the difference now versus 5, 6, 7 years ago. The consumers are tapped out, man. The consumers are tapped out. Now, you may be sitting there thinking, oh, it's not, I got a good lane. I've got a good customer. I've got a good contract. I'm doing really well. Some of you jump down in the comments and say, I'm doing better than ever. Man, good for you. And count yourself lucky, okay? But just because you have sunny skies over your head does not mean that there's not storms elsewhere. And I'm telling you guys, there are a lot of storms over a lot of people's heads right now. So if you don't feel that, count yourself lucky. But here's the thing. There is now, in the first quarter of 2025, there was $1.2 trillion in credit card debt in America. In the first quarter of 2025, 1.2 trillion. I believe it was 900 billion roughly before COVID. So that's a 30% increase in credit card debt now in 2025 versus right before COVID. 30% increase in credit card debt. Now, ironically, that 30% is kind of right up along the total increase that we've seen in inflation since then. And I actually think it's higher than 30%, but let's go with a 30% number. Some analysts, and this and that, organizations, entities say it's less. It's not less. It's at least 30%. I think it's higher than that. But if we're going to accept that it's 30%, it's interesting to me that the credit card debt is 30% higher than it was pre-pandemic. But anyway, $1.2 trillion in credit card debt. Now, what that says is that not only are the consumers maxed out on their credit card availability, they're also now paying a lot more on payments and interest. So they can't use that credit and they can't afford the payments. You see what I'm saying? So they're not only is their buying power much less because of inflation, they now have even less because they're making these higher payments on all this debt, and they now don't have the credit to be able to go use their purchasing power. So, and everything's more expensive. Mortgages, housing, all of it, food, everything is more expensive now than it was right before the pandemic. So consumers are tapped out. There's not the money. So going out there and saying, oh, well, the tariffs have been temporarily paused or lifted or this or that, and their ships and the ports are starting to get active, that doesn't mean shit if people don't have money. So what I'm saying is, I don't think that there's light. I think there's light at the end of the tunnel eventually, but that light, we ain't close to the end of the tunnel. Not even nowhere near close to the end of the tunnel. Nowhere. Like that light you may see in the tunnel, that's a lightning bug. That is not the end of the tunnel. So it's so damn frustrating because it's like, man, I hear stories every single day. I had a subscriber and someone who's become a little bit of a friend text me yesterday. I'm not going to mention his name because it's a very private conversation. Texted me yesterday asking about how I dealt with the devastating financial situation that I was in 2 years ago. So I'm having these conversations on the regular with people who are completely underwater and unable to catch a breath. So just because freight shipments are picking up and stuff like that does not mean that the consumers can start buying and the economy is suddenly going to start churning again like it was pre-pandemic. No, the whole thing is broken. The whole thing is broken. Logistics is broken. Freight is broken. The economy is broken. Nobody has money like in mass, in scale, like we did 5 or 6 years ago. So, they can go out there and hoot and holler all they want about freight now seeming to go upwards and normalize. And they're saying the next 3 or 4 weeks is going to be the strongest that we've seen in 2 years. I don't believe that. I do not believe that. And besides that, a lot of these analysts have been saying that freight's coming back for months and months. And then they constantly come up with excuses, right? They'll say, well, we didn't anticipate the tariffs, or, we didn't anticipate inflation continuing, or this or that, constantly making excuses. It's like you guys are basing all of your analysis and all of your economic outlooks on old models that are not realistic and not relevant today. Those models don't work today because we've gone through this system that broke the network, it broke logistics, and consumers are tapped out. So I don't think that it's going to get better. I'm just being honest with you guys. Not anytime soon. Not anytime soon. So I guess that's just my rant on just the frustration of this just constant, we're to the moon, freight's so back, and then it's not. I digress. I'd love to know your thoughts on that. Leave me a comment down below. What are you seeing? What are you experiencing? What do you think? And now let me really quickly get to my housekeeping update for those of you who've stuck it out and wanted to hear it and care. So I've got longtime subscribers, especially members of the channel. And by the way, if you want to join the channel as a member, it's called Club 34. It's 50 cents a week, you guys. And it's going to give you behind the scenes access to everything that I'm doing with my studio. But there's been substantial progress. Like I'm really quite stoked at how I don't want to get too much into the changes coming to the channel yet. There will be some videos on that probably at the end of June, because that's when the channel will start transitioning. And it's good. I'm not going to become some gaming channel or something like that. So don't think that I'm making some wild pivot like that you've seen other channels do, where all of a sudden I'm going to start streaming games for 8 hours. No, nothing like that. It's going to be good. You guys are going to love it. I'll be rebooting my podcast. My podcast is, I maybe do an episode early next week. I started a podcast with a couple guys last year called Drive Axle. It's on all the podcast apps. You can go, we did a couple test episodes last year, and the problem we ran into was getting 3 dudes who are all truck drivers, all on the road, all on different schedules, together to do a podcast was very difficult. Not only was it difficult to even time it right to where we could do it, it was difficult to try and do research and try to have good audio and try to edit these things. It was like, it's completely unrealistic. The guys who do it, my hat is off to you, because when I'm out on the road, I don't want to edit anything. I don't want to edit my videos. I don't want to edit anything. Like, I'm out there to run my truck and make money. That is why I'm out on the road. I'm not out there to have a podcast studio or anything like that. So it was really difficult, and it was a subpar product. But all the branding is there. We're on all the podcast apps, so Apple, Spotify, all of it. Basically any app that you can get podcast on, just go search Drive Axle Show. And I hope to have an episode next week. This will be the last week of May. And then that's going to become a regular podcast probably at the beginning of July, a weekly podcast. So I'm excited about that. So I've got the studio coming. I've got the podcast coming. I've got a private podcast that's just for YouTube members. We're going to be doing some crazy good content. Our Discord is being set up. It is the nicest Discord server I've ever seen. If you're familiar with Discord, I'm just telling you guys, it's really nice. And it's got a private section for Club for 34 members. So a lot of good things happening, you guys. I should have some videos up about the studio work. Yesterday was just, I got scratch on my face. I got like 30 mosquito bites. I spent the entire day yesterday trying to set up Starlink with a Wi-Fi 6 mesh system, because I have multiple buildings on the property that all need high-speed internet. And getting this is very rural, so you can't get normal internet. The Starlink is it. That's it. There was never any internet previous to Starlink. But now I've got to do Cat 6. I got to bury Cat 6 to backhaul all the mesh system to make it even stronger. But basically, at the access point of Starlink, I'm now getting close to 300 down. And then the farthest point from that's inside of a building is getting 60 down and like 15 up. So I'm pretty impressed with that. But it took a lot of work because right now it's a jungle. The canopy is out of control. It's very difficult to get a clear view of the sky and maintain that clear view of the sky. But that was the whole day yesterday, is just getting the whole property wired for high-speed internet, wired and unwired. So it's a work in progress, because something you think that you might be able to knock out in an hour ends up taking 8 or 9 hours. But it's coming along. So, all right, guys, that's it for this one. Be safe, make good decisions, always drive, thrive. Talk to y'all soon.